We're a senior lender. So because of the illiquidity of banks, we're providing first position construction loans to the best developers in America, bar none. Guys who've been doing this 20, 30, 40 years, who've done thousands and thousands and thousands of units. And we're giving them first position loans, similar to what banks were doing 2 years ago, but we're earning 12.5% fixed returns on our loans. And then we're able to use what we call back leverage, and we're getting to teen returns as a senior secured lender with full personal guarantees to sponsors who've never defaulted on a loan in their life. So incredible opportunity that not only to make money now and to make loans today, but for us and for DLP, the opportunity is to build relationships with these sponsors that we'll be able to keep for the next 10, 15, 20 years as we're there for them in this market environment and build a real relationship and then add value to them and helping them scale their business. We have a pipeline right now of over $1 billion in loans signed up. And so we're going to likely blow past that because of the amount of opportunity we're seeing today.
What's up, Don? Good to have you on the show again.
Hey, Justin. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's really rare for me to bring anyone back on for a second time, just because I have so many people I'm excited to introduce our audience to. But you're one of my favorites. You're one of the early people on the mastermind. I think a lot has changed in the last 4 to 5 years, probably closer to 5 years. And a lot of cool stuff's going on in your world, and I'd love to talk about it.
Awesome. I can't wait. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So for those that don't know your story, I think it'd be fun to talk about it. But before we do that, we were just talking off camera about summer travels. And I think you live an incredible life. We were kind of comparing notes on where we're each traveling to and some of the fun things that we're doing with the family. And part of the reason I love having you on the show is you're such a family man. You know, you put your faith, your family, your friends at such a high tier, you know, and above business, which I love. You know, we talk a lot in the Front Row Dads community of being a family man first, a businessman second, and you exemplify that. So tell us some of the cool stuff you're doing with the family this summer.
Yeah, thank you. And so I have 3 boys, 12, 11, and 2. And so my wife and I made the decision about 4 or 5 years ago now that we were going to virtually school our kids, and really for this reason, right, to give us freedom and flexibility, and for us to have as big of an imprint on our children as possible. It's been an amazing decision. Very blessed that my wife was a school teacher, so that's certainly helped. And we actually have a full-time teacher and her husband who travel with us, and so it's been a really, really cool journey. And we set a BHAG, a Big Hairy Audacious goal as a family around that time. It was to have 1,000 extraordinary days in 100 different places before my oldest goes to college.
Wow.
So when we set that goal, I think we had a 12-year time frame to do that. We have 7 years left, 7 summers left, right? So about 5 years ago. And so we worked out the math. It was like, we have to hit about 80 days a year, extraordinary days. And how an extraordinary day works for us is every one of us has to vote that this was an extraordinary day. And so we do that a lot of times at the end of the day. Sometimes we do it once a week, kind of on Sabbath, but it's created a really cool rhythm, not only to really focus on intentionally enjoying time together, but then the fun of talking about what we did. And then at the end of the month, talking about all the extraordinary days we had, which one was our favorite. And at the end of the year, it's created this really cool rhythm. So what we have coming up this summer. So literally to your note about Front Row Dads, it's literally my next travel. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, where we live in the summertime. We live in St. Augustine as home base most of the year. So next week, this Sunday, we're heading to our Building an Extraordinary Family event, which is an event we're doing to help a lot of our clients, our investors, our operators build an extraordinary family. And we'll bring in all kinds of awesome speakers like John Maxwell and John Gordon. And we're going to have education for kids from 5 years on up, teenage education, etc. We've got America's Got Talent shows. We're going to Dollywood. We've got all kinds of fun stuff, philanthropy for kids. It's a really cool time, not only for us to get to have an incredible experience like this with our kids, but invite a lot of our employees and our investors and our clients to do the same. And then from there, we'll head to Pennsylvania, Newport, Rhode Island, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Jackson Hole, back here to Asheville. So that'll make up a good amount of our summer. There'll be some other smaller trips in between, but that'll be our summer travels. And you're up to some really cool travels as well. But yeah, that's what we've got coming up.
Oh, I love it. That's incredible. And, like you, we love having these summer experiences. And, we're going to spend some time abroad in Greece this summer. And we're going to live on Lake Powell for a week, which we did last year with some friends. That was incredible. Awesome. We're going to do this really cool food tour all over Europe, but primarily in Copenhagen, because three of the top 20 restaurants in the world, actually, I think 3 of the top 5 rated restaurants in the world are there. So we're going to go to Noma, Alchemist, a couple others right there that are just incredible opportunities. So should be a ton of fun. Yeah, like you, we want to create these experiences because we have limited time, right? I mean, I like how you gave the countdown of the number of summers that are left. And I think that's a great, it puts things into perspective when you say, hey, I only have 8 summers left, 7, 6, 5, so on and so forth, and to really get the most out of it. So I love that you do that. And you and I just got a chance to hang out in person in Jacksonville with Tim Tebow. And I know you guys have done a bunch of stuff with him, but it's always fun seeing what you and DLP are up to. And you live in a beautiful part of the world there in St. Augustine, and then Asheville for your second home is really nice, a gorgeous place. But how did you get there? Let's talk about this because DLP is one of the biggest companies in your space. You've had incredible growth. At one point in time, and I don't know what the numbers are today, but I think I remember when we had you on the first time, you had like somewhere between like 6 to 10 years of 60% growth year over year, which is just out of control. Just 11 consecutive years on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies. Obviously you're doing some things right here, but how did you get there?
Yeah, thank you for that. And when I was on last time, it was actually you were launching your book, and I was launching my first book, Building an Elite Organization. And I think we were having some of that conversation, and which I'll kind of weave into a quick story. But so I grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Leavelle, Pennsylvania, hour north of Philadelphia, known today maybe most for Lehigh University, and grew up very humble beginnings. So I grew up to 2 parents who had me very young, 16 years old, limited resources. You expect from 2 16-year-olds without high school diplomas, and I was the oldest of 5. And some reason, God made me the way He did, and He gives each of us specific gifts and blessings. And for me, I realized at a pretty young age that I was, pretty entrepreneurial and also pretty driven. And so I had that spirit through my childhood. And I also, with that entrepreneurial spirit comes a kind of pig-headed stubbornness at times. And sometimes you can say overconfidence. And by 17 years old, at junior high school, I thought I had life figured out. And I moved out of my parents' house and went out on my own and knew what I was going to do. And I didn't need to listen to my parents anymore. And waited tables to get through high school and knew what I was going to do. I was going to be a wealth manager. I was going to be a financial advisor, and got all my licenses when I turned 18 and figured I needed to get a degree, and went to Drexel University, unfortunately on nearly a full ride, and worked at companies like Merrill Lynch and BlackRock and McGladrey in Poland, but knew I was going to be an independent entrepreneurial financial advisor, and continued to wait tables. And finally, a guy convinced me to come work for him, selling alarm systems door to door. I know you have a similar story, and that led to that gentleman being in real estate, and convinced me to get my real estate license. And I was 20 years old, and it just took off really, really fast. And that was 2006. It was October 2006. It was the peak of the real estate market. That was literally the month where property values hit their top. And my marketing message was, your home sold in 68 days, guaranteed, or I'll buy it. And that was a right message at the right time. And a lot of pound on the pavement. Started growing a brokerage, started growing a home flipping business. That led to growing a construction company and a property management company. That led to us needing more capital and starting to raise private capital into funds. So your proverbial family and friends money, but my family all did and still worked for me. And my friends were in their 20s. So it was, going to doctors and and bankers and professionals in my market. And it's been an 18 plus year journey since. And to your note earlier, we've grown our revenue by 50% or more every year for 18 straight years. One of the 5,000 fastest growing companies for it'll be 12 years when the report comes out shortly. And a note to that, more companies go out of business due to indigestion and starvation. It's one of my favorite quotes. And the Inc. 5000 is a great example of that. It measures your growth over 3 years. And if you make that list once, you're more likely 5 years later to be out of business than to ever make the list again. So it's been a great journey, and we know we're just getting started with doing what I know God's called me to do, and what we get the blessing of doing every day at DLP.
Well, you're defying the odds. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I know very few businesses and founders that have grown 50% on the revenue side of things 18 consecutive years. That's just, I mean, it's unfathomable, really. I mean, well done. Congratulations. I love what DLP stands for, right? Dream, live, prosper is kind of the roots of the business. Yeah. And I love that you've basically kind of transitioned into different niches or industries or sectors over time, starting as, home flipping. You've done single family homes, you've done multifamily, you're still in both of those spaces. You've done lending, you've done so many things. And even before that, on the realtor brokerage side of things. So you've got quite the diverse background. But something else that I think is really special about what you've done is you haven't just grown your business with these crazy numbers. You've actually built a framework that you have written about and have taught to other entrepreneurs. And, 5 years ago or so, right around there was when you launched your first book. And then you launched a second book after that, kind of fine tuning it even further. And I'd love to hear you share a little bit about the difference between those two books and really why you feel emboldened and passionate about sharing with other founders and other people this whole idea of scaling and scaling wisely and, doing so in a methodical, proven format.
Yeah. Thank you. And so just to answer that question and give a little bit of quick framework to what we do today, and it'll lead to explaining the books and our thinking there. So today at DLP, we're $5.25 billion of assets. We own about 25,000 attainable or affordable housing units, apartments, homes for working families. That's our core fundamental business. I've been called to transform lives, see a building of thriving communities, and at the center of a thriving community is safe, attainable housing. That's the starting point, not the end point. So we own about 25,000 units, and we operate them, and we develop new housing units, et cetera. But the bigger side to our business is we provide capital to other developers, builders, and operators who do the same. And we started doing that about 10 years ago. And about 6 years ago, I got a phone call. So we were 4 years into lending, and one of the clients who I was lending to was really my first client I ever was lending to. When I met him, he was a small home flipper, flipping a few homes a year. And now, 4 years later, he's got a business where he has 50 employees and he owns $150 million worth of real estate. And he's somebody who I'm highlighting to investors and so forth, a little success story to look at how we've helped him grow his business by providing him with capital, helping him find deals. He's grown this business. He's living this American dream. And on a Thursday night in December, so let me think now, this is 2018. So going back 6 years ago now, he calls me up and he's in a panic. And he's kind of rambling all over the place. And he's telling me, all these problems he's got going on. And he's telling me that he just had to fire his controller because he thinks he was stealing from him. He's telling me he can't get he can't get anybody's company to do anything. He's got to do everything himself. And he's working 100 hours a week just to stay on top of everything. And he just keeps rambling. And he goes on to tell me that he's been so stressed and working so hard that just this past week, his wife filed for divorce and is taking his two young kids, right? And then finally, he tells me why he called me, which was that he can't make payroll on Friday. It's Thursday at 9:30 at night. He can't make payroll on Friday because he's out of money. And when I heard all this, it's over, I don't know, just maybe 10-minute phone conversation, 15-minute phone conversation. It felt like somebody, when I heard that, somebody had just kicked me right in the stomach, right? Because I'm thinking he's a success story, thinking I'm highlighting him and finding out this guy's wife's leaving him with his 2 young kids, controller stealing from him, he can't make payroll, he's stressed out like crazy. And it hit me right down there like a ton of bricks that I had failed him. And I'd failed him because all I did is what most lenders do. I provided him money. And the deals all made sense. They were good deals. But I had learned long before that the hard part in running a business isn't raising capital. It isn't finding deals. It isn't the external side. It's the internals. It's totally hiring and building a great team. It's developing leadership. The great John Maxwell likes to say, everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's true. There's a terrible quote in business that said, business would be so easy if it wasn't for the people, right? That's the hard stuff, right? Building process and structure and discipline. And I knew that. I had been running this disciplined process in our company for years. We called it the Elite Execution System, but I had only been using it for ourselves. And in that moment, it hit me. I needed to help him. So we helped him make payroll. Then we got involved and basically implemented the Elite Execution System as business and helped him solve all his problems, hire, kind of restaff his organization. And now he's still a client of mine to this day and is running a great business. And that led to me writing the book, building a elite organization, which is this book that came out back in 2020, and helping a lot of other organizations build great businesses. We call it the blueprint to scaling a high growth, high profit business. And any of the sponsors we deploy our capital with, we get actively involved in helping them scale their business, which not only helps them avoid that situation, but also helps reduce our risk and in turn the risk to our investors. Because if we're deploying our capital with them, we know the hard stuff is the internals of the business. We get involved in helping them hire, helping them how they run meetings. I think of the framework of the Elite Execution System as how do you set goals, how do you achieve them, how do you communicate, and how do you solve problems as you grow your company. And so that's what we help other companies do. And the other reason we wrote the book is because I believe that all the biggest problems we face in this country, I hate to break it to anybody who doesn't know this, but they're not going to be solved by politicians, right? They're not going to be solved by no matter who wins this next election. The greatest problems we face are going to be solved by small businesses, right? It's going to be solved by creative entrepreneurs who are going to come up with solutions for the biggest problems we face. And so I know it's hard to grow business. I've done it. I've helped a lot of organizations do it. So the system helps people grow a high growth, high profit business that can solve people's problems. And it's been a really cool journey. And then last year we came out with this book called Building an Elite Career, which is actually the employee version of the book, which talks to the employees within a high growth entrepreneurial business. And it's been just an incredible journey.
Well, it's brilliant. I couldn't agree with you more. And yes, I believe that entrepreneurs are going to find the solutions, period, to all the issues or virtually all the issues. It's going to be an entrepreneur that solves for it. It is not going to, politicians have different motives and often a lot of unintended consequences in decisions made. And so it's the entrepreneurs that will grind, that will figure it out, that will see these opportunities and will take advantage of them in a very win-win scenario. They're going to be, if you have a good idea, if you execute well, you're going to be taken care of well, because whoever adds the most value has the highest opportunity to earn and grow. But what I love about your model is you not only are, let's say, a lending platform, which is just one of many things you do, but you come in and you add value, you help them, you de-risk the deal, but you help them run a better business, whether they, and quite frankly, you may help them so much that they don't need you in the future, which is interesting, but that's for the better good. But also because of that, they may want to work with you more. And so it's a really cool concept. And then to double up with, hey, let's just get this book to all your employees to get them on the same mission, create the culture, create the understanding, create, kind of like a similar frame of mind and frame of work. So I love what you're doing there. I think it's incredible. And obviously the book has done well because you've been, you've hit all the bestseller lists, right? The USA Today and Wall Street Journal and Amazon. And so your books have wonderful content in them, but it's cooler. A lot of people have those accolades. It's actually cool to see that yours is actually showing up in these businesses in a very successful manner. Like you see the fruit of the methodology in the results. And I think that's cool. And I think for anyone that's heard of any of these different operating systems, I think it's so important that you have one. Just like personality assessments, I think, are really important. And it's hard to say this one's better than that one, because if you learn any of them, they can be great. To me, I have a hierarchy of which ones I like better, which ones I think are more applicable. But to have something that gives a common language amongst the teams and a common goal, I think is so important. And you obviously have the track record for it with 18 years of 50%, 50% growth on the revenue side.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. It's cool when I get to meet people I meet people and I get to know people who then, build a relationship with, and then we help them go through this journey of building, an elite organization, building a high growth, high revenue. It's a lot of fun and it's really cool when I get to see and hear the stories and get the appreciation for the value that's created for the lives of our clients and their employees and their client. But one of the coolest things that's been happening a lot more over the past year or so is now I'm getting more and more people who I don't know at all, who reach out to me or run into me in different ways and thank me and say, hey, I've been running, read your book and now I'm running your technology or I'm doing this in my company. I had a really cool story so a few months ago, a guy reached out to me, runs a big technology company in Silicon Valley, and somebody gave him my book and he read it and he went on his own. He's an engineer by training, and he went and implemented the lead execution system. It was pretty big for-profit business, right? And he loved it so much. He also runs a ministry in Belize, and really great ministry called Pathlight. And anyway, so he reaches out to me, and I say this humbly, a lot of ministries, a lot of nonprofits reach out to us for donations, and we do a lot of philanthropy, and anyway, so he reaches out to me, and turned out that I had mutual connections to his ministry already, and so I flew to Belize, a part of a really cool vision trip I did. I went to Costa Rica, Panama, Belize, and Guatemala with 3 different ministries a couple months ago, and spent a bunch of time with him and his team, and it went great. And he didn't want, and we have now become a donor as well, but wasn't looking for donations. What he wanted was us to implement the lead execution system into this ministry where he's changing the nation of Belize, and then his 3-year plan is to go into 2 more countries. And anyway, so I just had a team of 3 people in Belize, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, of this past week, implementing the lead execution system into this ministry that helps these teenage kids, the most high potential teenage kids in the country, change the nation. We're developing the brightest, sharpest leaders in their country, and seeing ministries like that doing incredible social work, getting the benefit of putting in the discipline of a great business into a ministry, it's been pretty cool.
I love it. By the way, it's got to be the coolest feeling in the world to see the ripple effects of impact that happen because you were brave enough to put down these ideas in a book that are kind of scary, because people could, we all know if we have written a book, there are going to be people out there that just are going to hate on you. They're going to be negative. They're going to attack you. So you got to have some thick skin on that. But some people, they're looking for reasons to tear you down. And so to be vulnerable enough to put your work and your ideas out into the world is a big, it's a huge thing. And I just love the idea of, it's not exactly this, but kind of creating a Y Combinator in other countries, or some variation of it, with really smart people that can go on and do things, have high impact in a nation that needs it, that is, third world or certainly not first world.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just response to that is if he is for us, who can be against us, right? So, but yes, there's certainly people who will hate as you put yourself out there.
That's right. Well, and I love, how important your faith is to you. I mean, even the verse I think that is kind of like the verse that guides your life is to whom much is given, much will be required. Luke 12:48. And I love that you are driven. We're in a mastermind called Wellspring, which is Christian entrepreneurs that really want to have impact and have meaning, have impact. Be incredibly generous, help each other grow their businesses, but to also make money matter, right? And to have impact with those dollars. And so I love that you lead your team that way. You run your business that way. I think it's powerful to be rooted in something that is much bigger than you.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed 100%. And it's easy to do when you recognize how small in the scheme of things, right? How tiny our impact is, right? And a lot of people when you're on podcasts like we're doing right now, everybody likes to hear the America's Got Talent story, the rags to riches story, right? Everybody wants to hear those things, and everybody we're in a society that likes to worship heroes, right? And we like to hear those stories of these business tycoons or who have achieved this incredible success or wealth when they came from nothing, and people love to celebrate those kind of success stories, and it's easy, and it's easy for people who achieve worldly business success to start worshiping themselves, right, and to start feeling that people should worship them because they've achieved so much. And when you recognize that I had no effect on the fact that I was born in the United States, right, the greatest country on earth. I was born to two parents who loved me and cared for me. I was born knowing God cared for me, beginning raised in faith. I was born with a set of gifts and capabilities and blessings that I had no role in, right? And as each of us does, right? And was given the wisdom to know how to go out and apply the skills that were provided into platform at the right time to come into real estate and with the strengths of to be able to lead and things that I had such a little time. If I worked really hard and to live out, that too much has been given, much required, except that discipline and hard work and focus is expected, and that living on the beach and just hanging out and worrying just about myself isn't enough, right? Just living the American dream isn't enough, but living what I call the 100x American dream, the responsibility to impact the lives of 100 isn't to a lot of people sounds like a lot, but to me, thousands of people's lives, to transform thousands of people's lives is to help them live, per se, the American dream is my responsibility to use those blessings that are provided to me. It keeps you humble when you really believe that and accept that and understand that we have such a small piece in our own story and what we're able to accomplish. It's humbling at times, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I love your perspective. I love your humility. You've always shown up that way ever since I've known you. We got a chance to meet through Tiger 21 originally.
Yeah.
We share a number of mutual friends, and that's always how you've shown up to me, regardless of where you've been in terms of success, which is cool. You're just easy to talk to. Yeah. And, what's also fun is you put on some big events for your company with, big name speakers, and, you just want to have impact, not just to the masses, but also with the people that you have the closest relationships with, your employees, your business partners. I feel privileged to have recommended, one of my closest friends, Hal Elrod, to come speak to you guys on Miracle Morning. And I know you do a lot of stuff there. We actually just took him out for his birthday to dinner and had just a wonderful evening. But it's cool seeing what you're doing inside your business, outside your business, and the way that you're really blessing people.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome. Like you said, we get to be a part of a lot of really cool masterminds and groups that not everybody gets to be a part of. So I take it as a great responsibility to take the wisdom and the connections and relationships and knowledge we gain and try to share them with those, as you said, that we care about and we know will benefit from it. And Hal's been also come to a couple of our events. He actually wrote the foreword to my first book here, forwarded by Hal Elrod. Yeah, so he's awesome. love Miracle Morning, and we've run Miracle Morning, our organization, for many, many, many years. And yeah, it's a great blessing.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I'm also excited to see the growth that you've had being an early investor with you guys. And, we've done a lot of stuff through the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind and, with our community. But I'd love for you to kind of break down all the divisions that exist in DLP, because you guys are in a lot of verticals. And I think it'd be nice to just clarify kind of where you're playing, what are the investments that you specialize in? Because you've gotten into a number of things over the years, but you've also been in some of the same things for 18 years.
Yeah. A simple way I like to think about it, and how I frame it and we frame it internally, is what we invest in at DLP is to build thriving communities. And what that centered in is attainable workforce housing. So that's really all we do. We invest in attainable workforce housing. That's it. That could be multifamily or apartments, could be single family, but it's attainable housing. And almost everything we do is a community, meaning it's a number of homes in one location with common amenities and on-site support and resources and activities and events and people doing life together. And so that's what we do. We do that in a few different ways. We do that as we own and operate existing rental communities. Once we own and operate 70 plus existing communities, apartment and single family rental communities. And we have an investment fund that you can invest in that owns all of those communities. And we generate great current returns from rent. We sell properties over time. And we've been able to generate about a 20% return to investors over the last good number of years, all sheltered from tax. And so that's one thing we do. Then we go and we build brand new rental communities. So we directly develop and build new communities. And we have a fund that does that. You can invest as an equity investor in building brand new housing. And that's the most impactful thing we do, because no matter where you're listening to this from, I can guarantee you, you will, odds are 99% chance that you're thinking to yourself, we have a lack of housing where I live, right? We have a lack of affordable housing here. Every time we talk to people, we say, oh, you need to come to where I live because this is a major problem here. Guess what? It's a major problem everywhere, right? We have a lack of affordable housing everywhere. And so that's what we do. We build brand new housing that's affordable. And all of our funds are impact funds, meaning we're self-mandated that we create housing that is and will remain affordable. And then we have two funds that lend money to other developers, builders, and operators who invest in building thriving. And that's what we do. So for investors, they can invest in a fixed return, private real estate credit fund that generates great current returns from making short-term loans to professional developers and builders like DLP. Or you can invest in our funds that invest preferred equity into building new housing communities or owning existing. And all of those funds are evergreen, open-ended, meaning investors can stay in as long as they want, exit when they want. They all produce regular income. They all produce great overall double-digit returns. And I'm blessed, and I say this very proudly. And we've generated our return targets in every fund in every period since we ever started. Double-digit return, never missed a target. That's been a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but especially in a market like we're in today.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, we're also in a market where we're seeing a lot of companies failing. We're seeing a lot of funds failing. We're seeing a lot of syndications failing. We are seeing really poor terms. We're seeing floating rates. We're seeing a lot of bridge loans. We're seeing an abuse on leverage. We're seeing, there's just so many things that are, a lot of people are in trouble. I just heard about another two. I'm not going to say the names of these companies because my goal is not to disparage, but there are two big companies that I just learned about this week that are likely going to default on their investors and on their properties. And, when this happens, the investors get wiped out completely. And the common equity specifically, which is lowest on the rung on the cap table, they get wiped out. So I'd love to hear some of what you have done and put in place to protect DLP from what is happening already and what is likely to continue to happen to a lot of these other operators in the real estate space.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I was speaking at a really big real estate, probably the biggest event in the country for syndicators about a month ago, and it was funny. I'm there, and the guy's running the event. He's like, "Hey, we were originally going to do this panel about all the distress in the market and all kind of the defaults," and he said, "But after we started talking to people, we realized that there's not really any distress, so we're not going to do that panel. We're going to change it to something else." And I told him, I said, "You're completely wrong. There's lots of distress." And so I ended up being on stage for two different times, and I gave people some really tough feedback about what's really going on in the market that we get to see kind of firsthand, being that we're providing capital and seeing so many situations coming to us for help all the time. And what people don't like to admit or know or recognize is the first thing that we did, and the first thing that great sponsors did is they did the hard work of the stuff we were talking about earlier, the hard stuff of building an elite organization. They invested in building a disciplined organization, building an organization with really great people, executing at a really high level with a lot of accountability and ownership, and having discipline around your debt, having discipline around having cash in the bank, having liquidity, and we were preaching this, and I give a whole long story. I know we're kind of tight on time, but when I talk to organizations and I tell them, "Hey, we can help you implement and build an elite organization," back in 2020, 2021, I get a ton of people say, "Yeah, that's what I want to do." And they'd sign up for our help in doing that. And then they didn't want to actually do the work, right? Because it wasn't fun. It was easier to just go raise capital than to do the hard work of building discipline and structure. So a lot of the hard work is done before something like interest rates going up 5% happens, right?
Yep.
And so the problems people are facing today, beyond that they didn't prepare, is two things. One is they don't have the capital, the staying power. They don't have access to capital to deal with the fact that they have capital calls on their loans, or have to refinance and come up with cash, or they don't have the resources. They don't have the capital or the liquidity to weather this storm, this capital markets, financial market storm. So that's the one big problem that a lot of organizations still have. They don't have the right capital structure. They did these syndications with a bunch of high net worth investors that set no margin for error, no margin for anything to go wrong, certainly no margin for rates to go up 5% on floating rate debt. So that's the first fundamental issue that's going on today. And the second fundamental issue is managing. The business I'm in is rental housing. Managing rental housing is hard, right? So everybody's pro formas say, I'm going to average 94, 95% occupancy with 0.5% bad debt and really low expense ratios. And I'm going to sell it at a 4 cap rate in 5 years. And operating at those kind of levels is very, very hard, especially if you're in C and kind of lower B class housing. It's tough. It's a very tough space. It's a very rewarding space if you think of it as an industry as I do, but it's a very, very tough business. So executing to the assumptions that people set out, not easy, especially if you don't operate now. So the most common situation that people invest in is a syndicator with 2 or 3 partners and 4 employees who's using third-party management, third-party brokers, third-party everything, with no reserves, no capital, his or herself, now in the tough market. Well, rents aren't going up 15% a year, and there's not a buyer who can just buy things from you, and another lender will give you another loan. And so it's a challenging market. So one of the fundamental things we do for our investors is all of our investments are preferred equity or debt. So we're never the common equity. So we always have common equity behind us in every deal, which is, to your example, I have a deal right now where our investors are going to get a 17% return on investment, and the common equity behind us is getting wiped out. So they're getting 0 returns and they're losing all of their money. But our investors are going to get all their money returned plus a 17% return because of where we're at in the capital stack. And most investors don't even know where they're at in the capital stack. And if you don't know, you're probably in the top 2%, which means if the wind blows in the wrong direction, you can get wiped out. Because what a lot of sponsors were doing was take out 75, 80% debt, then get an equity partner who gives you 90% of the equity. So you're 10% of the 20% equity, which means you're literally the top 2% of the capital in the deal. And so not only do we make sure at the deal level is there always a lot of equity behind us, but in the fund level, all of DLP's returns are subordinate to our investors getting their returns. So we don't earn even a management fee to investors get their returns. So we make sure investors are first, and because of the structure and the discipline we put in place to what we invest in and how we underwrite it, we operate it ourselves, et cetera. We've been able to be really consistent. Doesn't mean this market's not challenging. We've been able to navigate it and protect our investors really well.
Well, I just love what you have put in place, the way that you protect the downside risk, the way that you optimize the upside, and really the track record, I think, is great. And you guys have also been very generous with the lifestyle investor community. You always give us preferred terms, and we appreciate that. And I know that right now you guys are seeing some pretty incredible things. And for those of you that are unaware, there's some distressed deals happening. There are, those of us that are in the know are seeing a lot of cool opportunities right now. And so, if you know the right people, if you see the right deals, there's just ample opportunities for returns right now. But I would be careful, because I would say most people don't have those. Most people don't see those. Most people don't have the right systems in place or the right metrics to, to keep the investor dollar safe. But anything you want to offer to our community, we'll gladly be the recipients of, because you guys have been good to us.
Yeah, I'll just maybe wrap up with kind of thoughts about that. So I really believe, and I say right now, I mean literally the last, I'll call it 90 days, not saying even the last 2 years, just literally the last 90 days, we would say this has been the best market we've seen to invest in for what we do in the past 18 years since I've been in this business. So the three things we see in this market as opportunities right now. Number one, and this is the biggest thing we do, is we're a senior lender. So because of the illiquidity of banks, we're providing first position construction loans to successful full-time. Just simply put, we're giving construction loans to the best developers in America, bar none. Guys who've been doing this 20, 30, 40 years, who've done thousands and thousands of units. We're giving them first position loans, similar to what banks were doing 2 years ago, but we're earning 12.5% fixed returns on our loans. And then we're able to use what we call back leverage, and we're getting to teen returns as a senior secured lender with full personal guarantees to sponsors who've never defaulted on a loan in their life, right? On really great projects that they're building at a great time to buy, where they're getting lower construction costs, lower land basis, et cetera, et cetera. So phenomenal projects where we're senior secured first position loans, on average about 20 million of equity behind us, and the 12% unlevered returns with full personal guarantee. So incredible opportunity that not only to make money now and to make loans today, but for us and for DLP, the opportunity is to build relationships with these sponsors that we'll be able to keep for the next 10, 15, 20 years as we're there for them in this market environment, and build a real relationship and then add value to them and helping them scale their business, et cetera. So that's the biggest thing we're seeing. We have a pipeline right now of over $1 billion in loans signed up, and our plan this year was to do $1.5 billion of loans, and we're going to likely blow past that because of the amount of opportunity we're seeing today. So that's the first thing we're doing a lot of, that we're getting equity level returns as a senior secured first position lender. These are loans banks were doing 2 years ago at 3% interest rates, right? The second opportunity we're seeing is what we call rescue capital. And what I mean by that is great sponsors, great operators who know what they're doing, who are executing well, who are not having any challenge other than capital markets. So let's say they have a bridge loan where they took out a loan for 70% financing, and that loan's coming up for maturity. So now they go to refinance into a long-term loan, but they can only get financing of, say, 60%. Well, now they have this gap that, hey, I have a bridge loan for $30 million. I can only get a $25 million permanent loan. Where does that $5 million come from? And that's where we come in, and we'll do rescue capital, pref equity in a deal, on a great deal that's performing, sitting in the capital stack that's normally held by a lender, but again, actually getting equity returns, getting around 20% returns to sit behind all their equity in a deal, taking out a senior secured loan. So that's the second place, but adds a ton of value to operators, great deals, great everything. They don't want to sell in this market because values are lower, and so they want to wait. So they just need to solve a short-term capital challenge. And the third opportunity we're seeing is we are finding opportunities to buy deals for a variety of reasons, often kind of brand new construction type deals at a big discount to what it would cost to build it today. And fundamentally, the fundamental belief I have, which I say is a belief, but I think is almost a guarantee. I can't guarantee it, but it's almost, you talk to almost anybody in the space, and there's very few who would ever argue with this. It will cost a lot more to build housing 3 years from today than it costs today, or 5 years from today than it will cost today. Cost of building housing is not going down. Also, if you look at it 3 or 5 years from now, rents are going to be higher than they are today. Values are going to be higher than they are today. And we are finding opportunities where we can buy brand new or near brand new deals at a big discount to what we could build it today and deal with all the work and risk of building it. And so, example, we're buying a brand new deal or a few-year-old deal, nearly brand new deal here in Asheville, North Carolina, right now, at about $60,000 less than we could build it today. And it's already built. It's already stable. It's already 95% occupied. But there's some distress on the seller side due to some other issues in their portfolio that's creating this opportunity that they need cash now, and our ability to move quick and execute quick, provide that surety in a market where not a lot of groups have capital, is getting us those kind of opportunities. So those are the main type of opportunities we're seeing. So we're doing something right now that I'll mention that we'll offer out to your group. It may be closed to our general investor group by the time you listen to this podcast, but we'll offer it out to your community here, Justin, which we've never done this before. We're offering out a 1% kind of bonus or rebate to new investors coming and joining us right now. We're calling it our Invest Now incentive. So if you invest, $250,000, you'll get a $2,500 bonus added to your investment on top of the double-digit returns we generate and so forth, just for taking action, helping us act now, so we can close on the whole pipeline we have and capitalize on as many of these great opportunities as we have. So just an incentive to help you kind of get going with us, give you an added reason to get started, get going with us right now, and not sit around and wait. And we're seeing the kind of opportunities now that are going to create outsized returns in our funds in the years ahead.
Well, thank you for always being so generous with our community and always giving us some preferred terms. We appreciate that. I know we've been early adopters with you guys, and yes. Really appreciate all that you guys do. So where can our audience learn more about you, learn about your methodology, and learn about DLP in general?
Yeah, I'd say 2 places. So dlpcapital.com is our website, and we can put, of course, in all the recording info, all the different exact links. But there you can learn about our investment funds, learn about the events and free ministry, what type of work we do, and giving education and events and content for our investors, like the Building Extraordinary Family event we have coming up next week. And so everything about us you can see on dlpcapital.com. And then we have another website you can find off there, but it's dlpelite.com. And that's all the information about the elite execution system that I wrote books on. We give away tons of free tools and resources and whatnot if you're focused on building an organization or just focused on learning what we're doing. And maybe if you're doing due diligence or evaluating us, you can learn a whole lot about what we do, not only in building a great business, but also the personal development type training and education and resources we provide to help us build extraordinary legacies and lives as well.
Well, Don, this has been awesome. Thank you for joining again, and just love seeing all the cool things you're up to, seeing how much your business is growing, and seeing your investor base grow, and then also just the impact grow. That as you're given more, you are more and more generous. So thank you for that leadership. And to our audience, I love wrapping up every podcast episode with a question that I ask you. And the question is the same every time. It's this: what is one step that you can take today to move towards financial freedom and really the life that you truly desire? So a life on your terms, not by default like most people, but by design. And I really challenge you to pick one thing, at least one thing, that you learned from Don that can help you get closer to that reality. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.